Hello, everybody. Thank you for joining the Spiritism Talk Series hosted by the United States Spiritist Federation every Saturday morning at 11 a.m. Eastern Time. I am very happy to host this talk by Rejane Planner, who will be leading our live with the theme Demystifying Death. Before we get to Rejane, I have three announcements. First, there is a new weekly podcast-like series called Psychology and Spirituality, A Bridge to a Better Life based on the works of Joanna de Angelis. There is a new episode every Friday at 6 p.m. Eastern Time. The Psychology and Spirituality weekly talks based on the works of Joanna de Angelis will offer a safe space to confront, compare, correlate, and expand spirituality concepts from a psychological lens, bringing insights, actionable tips, and real-world advice to help you lead a better life. Please subscribe to receive notifications of new episodes at the USSF YouTube channel. Second announcement, the USSF is hosting the 17th U.S. Spiritist Symposium on September 30th, 2023 in Portland, Oregon. The symposium will focus on the topic of spiritual path to mental balance, with a full-day program including talks, panels, Q&A sessions, youth panel, kids and youth activities. Save the date. Finally, on the screen, please note there is a QR code. If you want to help the USSF promote more publications and promote Spiritism to everyone, please scan the QR code on screen for your donation. Now, back to Rejane. Hi, Rejane. How are you doing?
Thank you.
Good.
Hi, Peter.
Good.
Thank you.
So I'd like to welcome you, and it's great to have you here to discuss demystifying death. But before she begins to enlighten us, please allow me to introduce her more formally. Rejane Planner is an electrical and nuclear engineer with a master's degree in nuclear engineering from the Military Engineering Institute, IME, in Rio de Janeiro, Brazil. Since 1989, she lives and works in Austria. A retiree from the International Atomic Energy Agency, IAEA, she worked for 27 years at various positions in nuclear energy and nuclear safety and security. She was a long-term member of the IAEA Publications Committee, having coordinated dozens of publications and published several technical journals. A writer and poet, she has contributed articles to several Brazilian Spiritist magazines, among them Presença Espírita, Presença Espírita, Revista Internacional do Espiritismo International, Momento Espírita, and O Reformador. She is also a co-founder and vice chair of the Association for Spiritist Studies Allan Kardec. That's in Austria. So please take this opportunity to send your questions during the presentation using the chat window. Rejane has reserved time to address your comments and questions once she concludes her presentation. Okay, so Rejane, it is all yours.
Okay, thank you. Good morning or good afternoon, everybody. I hope you have a nice sunny day as we have here in Austria. First, I would like to thank you for this invitation. I'm glad and happy to be with you. I think Peter read quite a lot of myself, but I'm a very simple and humble person, I hope. I'm since 2015, after I retired from my professional work, I've been dealing more and more with research between science and the spiritism, not spiritualism, trying to reach those who have a more materialist mind. This is why what I'm bringing today here to you is a view between spiritism and some knowledge, some of the scientific views on the subject. Not to go too much on the science, but on the contrary, to bring to those who don't know spiritism a little bit of the connection, the interface, and how spiritism could be seen as a science. The subject of our talk is death. It's a very difficult subject. It's something that nobody wants to talk about, but everybody will have to face once. As we die, as we are born once, we will die. This is the only thing that we have to face that is determined in our life. It's interesting for me, and I think for you too, that this death, as we face it, or we just face it, is everywhere in our planet. Nature is full of dying and being born, life and death. And even if we want to hide this face of life, let's say in this way, we cannot, because we are confronted with this cycle of life. The fear of death is, in my opinion, and in the opinion of Kardec, Allan Kardec, the codifier of Spiritism, is the fear of the unknown. It is the uncertainty of what exists after this life, this earthly life, and also added with the guilt for the faults that people committed and sometimes are reading only he or she knows. Also for the suffering that sometimes we inflict on others, or crimes committed that remain, as I said, hidden, and the individual, of course, knows about. Also, many people, they fear what they say, the divine judgment, the settling of accounts, let's say in easier ways, no? Which this individual presumes will happen when he dies. There is a lot of religions, beliefs, and different ways of looking life. The materialist view, the religious view of life, but fear of death has been with the humankind from the beginning. Survival is our goal. That means it's quite normal that we fear losing our body, physical body, what we can grasp, what we can see it. The soul is something that we cannot see. And for those who don't understand the spiritual life or the spiritual side of life, it's very difficult to grasp. Kardec said that the fear of death, therefore, results from an insufficient knowledge of the future life. It also denotes aspirations for the continuing of this existence and the anxiety lest the destruction of the body should be the end. I will not read, but it's the desire to survive. And survival is one of the goals of any, not only human being, of any beings in this planet. We want to survive as a species, as an individual. Joana de Angelis spirit, of course, the spiritual guide from Divaldo Franco, when he was here in Vienna in 2010, she told us that when one is aware of the real meaning of that, as a passport, as to life, the joy of immortality replaces this anguish of the eternal goodbye, or the promise of the final judgment, or even what the never seeing someone again. Means knowing that this life continues in the next life, and knowing that the circle of life is on being born and dying, and again incarnation, reincarnation. This is what brings the individual a more peaceful life, a more a connection with the spirituality, with the high guides, with Jesus, and with all the messengers of God. The second point I would like to make is that in the nature, death means renewal. The nature renews itself constantly. There is why no one in nature, no other living being in this planet argues about that. Only we human beings. The nature does argue. The nature cannot regret that because it's there. We face big floods. We face destruction by fire, and in 1 year, 6 months after that, we see that the nature is blooming, is everything again alive. That means that if we look around us, that is really renewal. And moreover, if we look at what the scientists are saying, our body, and I have heard about that many years ago, and I thought, aha, this is spiritual judge, the spirituality talking. But this is true. We die every day. Every day, some part of our body is younger than we are. I'm around the 60s. I will not tell you how old I am, of course, but maybe some parts of my body are 15 years old. That, as you can see in this picture, for instance, our skin renews itself every 2 weeks. Our colon, in the gut, the epithelial cells of the colon, they renew every 5 days. The only cells that stay longer, that don't die during our lifetime, are the cerebral cortex. That means it's the only cells that are as old as we are. And this is something really to think about, to reflect about that, because even if our body is renewing itself, and of course we are getting old, because the cells cannot renew themselves in the same way that they were at the beginning. This is where a baby has a very nice skin, and we, a little bit older, have a different kind of skin, because the cells are renew every 2 weeks, but they lose the function of renew as well as in the same way than they were before. And the scientists explain that too, but I will not talk about that here. It would go beyond our talk. The other important thing to understand about that is that if in the past it was difficult to determine when that really occurs, today the science already, or the medicine already established that we have two ways of looking at that: the clinical death and the biological cerebral, or like we see in American English, the medical death. The clinical death would be that when the heart functions and the respiratory functions stop. However, if they can return, that means if they are reversible, the individual is not dead. Only if there is a irreversible cessation of cardiac and respiratory function, then that occurs. This way of determining that an individual is dead lacks certainty, because, and we can see that when we analyze the out-of-body experience, when we read or we listen to people that have an infarct, a heart infarct, and they can see with the eyes of the soul, of course. They can see the emergency team working on them, trying to get them back to life, and sometimes they can see the environment. If they are in a surgery room or in a emergency room, they can sometimes see the people that are operating on them, the surgery, what is going on, what the doctors are talking, and so on. This is the clinical death. It can reverse. But the biological death, it means when the cerebral functions fully stop, this cannot be reversed, and then it's a irreversible stop of the cerebral functions, then it's death. This is when starts the biological death, and our body will die, let's say in this way, slowly. The cells also die in different timing, in different period of time. This is why the death process is slow. The corpse, the cadaver, takes some time till it really disintegrate fully. And this has a lot of implications in some cultures and some let's say ways of dealing with death in our time. It's very common, for instance, that today instead of burying someone, they how do you say this in English? They burned. I don't know the word in English. I'm sorry, and I also forgot the word in German. Anyway, when I'm sorry, forgot. When the cadaver, the corpse is burned, no? That means it's making in ashes. You need some time. You need to wait a period of time for that, to be certain that that is there, and also from the spiritual point of view. And we will see why in some minutes. The quest for all that, and even for determining the time of our death, or the death of an individual, is what happens at that moment. And for the scientist, the quest is what happens to this inner light of consciousness with the death of the individual body and the death of the brain. There are different points of view in science and from the spiritual point of view and in Spiritism. But we'll see that a lot of scientists, a lot of top scientists already converge to understand, and to the understanding that our consciousness, the spirit, does die. It remains, it lives, it is immortal. And this is one of the most important understanding that we as individuals will have in our life. It changes our behavior. It changes our perspective of life. This is what demystifies that. As I said, there are different views in science, those that have a materialist view, those that already understand that the soul exists and the soul keeps its path, goes on his path longer and longer. And there are quite a lot of theories of conscience that indicate the continuation of the self, this awakening of the soul in the next life. I will not talk much about all those theories. I take the opportunity here to introduce you a paper I wrote 2 years ago in 2020, and it was published in this book on examination of religiosity, influence, perspectives, and health implications. There were 4 doctors and myself. Each one wrote a chapter. I think there is 9 chapters. Mine is chapter 8. And what my intention was to bring forward this knowledge that the view of the consciousness as the immortal soul, as the spirit. And then we talk about all the phenomena of the soul, the mediumship, and the various aspects of mediumship, and the scientific approach to those. Back to our subject, how we overcome fear, facing reality. Hard science will not be able, will be able once, but cannot account for awareness. Currently, we cannot, and cannot even explain how life evolves. However, more and more, as I said, more and more scientists become aware of this possibility and understand and take into account and do research on that. John Dyson is a British American theoretical physicist and mathematician. For me, he tells something because he works a lot in the nuclear area, and he writes. He says in an interview, and I found that in the Journal of Consciousness Exploration and Research, published in 2016, he says that it seems more reasonable to think that mind was a primary part of nature from the beginning, and we are simply manifestations of it at the present stage of history. It is not so much that mind has a life of its own, but that mind is inherent in the way the universe is built. And then more, he says that extrasensorial phenomena is real, but cannot be tested with the clumsy tools of science. What he's saying that currently the scientists did find a way, and I will say not currently, is exaggerating, because I just read a paper on a nice experience that I'll tell you in a minute. That means science, the academic science doesn't explain or doesn't research on extrasensorial phenomena or in anomalous phenomena as they should do. However, some people do. And interesting sites about that is the Society for Scientific Exploration and journals like that, the Journal of Consciousness Exploration and Research and others. The article that I want to mention to you that I just read, someone came here to visit, sorry for that. The article that I want to mention to you that I just read 10 days ago. It's a research that say that it's they measure using the double spirit experiment. That is the double spirit experiment. Is that experiment that started the quantum physics that proved that light has two faces that can behave as a particle or as a wave. They use that experiment to see how the mind influence matter, and they identify that it's needed only less than 10 volts for the mind to manipulate, to influence matter. This is something beyond what I would say that we could do it at the moment. It means for me that science is open itself for new discovery and merging what we talk in Spiritism. Back to the Spiritism, if we read in Heaven and Hell, we'll see that Kardec writes that the way to overcome this fear is to direct our thoughts to the source of life. What is the source of life for you? For me, it's God. For me, the source of life is this universe where we are in. The source of life is where I am as tangible physical body, but also a body that is full of energy, because each atom of my body is an energy. The atom is we see as a particle when we observe it, but it's an energy. It means that all our molecules, all our cells are made of atoms, and we are energy bodies, even in this tangible body. The other, he said, to the soul, which is the real being. Recognize that the soul is what we are. I, Rejane, I'm here talking to you, but who I am? This soul that went for thousands of lives till it come to this stage is still a very humble, a very ignorant soul, but with a perspective of learning the divine laws and growing in knowledge and in moral, becoming more in harmony with the universe. This is our path, recognizing that immortality and that we survive is what enable us to overcome fear. How can I tell that to a materialist? He or she will have to understand by themselves, by himself, by herself. How can I tell someone that I don't believe I know? They will say, how can you prove it? And then we come back to the Spiritism and back to the phenomena that I will talk in few minutes. From the spiritual point of view, that occurs when we lose this principle vital, when there is nothing that can vitalize all the functions on our body. This is what Kardec say in the Genesis. He says that, of course, this can occur due to various causes: old age, infirmity, illness over a long period, or other causes leading to the general weakening and exhaustion of the vital forces. Of course, there are other types of death. An accident, the vital forces are there, and it's cut. Why it's cut? Because the functions of the body are destroyed. The main functions of the body, either is a shooting in the head, or is an accident that person get the neck disconnected, and then there is no way to get the respiratory functions working and the heart functions working. There are different kind of that, of inflicting harm to someone, and they're the normal way of dying. Usually in the case of this slowly exhausting of the vital forces, that means the infirmity, the dying, the terminal ill people, and so on, those kind of that, the conscience may decrease in the last days, the limbs may become cool and bluish or mottled, the breathing becomes irregular, there is confusion, the individual sleeps and get awake and then sleep for long hours. They cannot coordinate well what they are seeing, but these are the physical signs in a dying person, in a terminal person. And of course, we are family, and if we are the one who is in this process, we need to be prepared for that. From everyone who is involved in the death process should be prepared. And today, medicine has a lot of ways of helping family and the dying. The other, also in this process, the process has kind of stages, and this was proposed by Elizabeth Kubler-Ross in 1969. Some scientists today don't acknowledge those 5 stages of the emotional stages of the terminal ill patient, because they say that it's old and there are new views. But in fact, as is today, many people accept that there are a first stage of denial, when people deny what is going on. Then the anger means, this cannot be happening with me. I don't accept. I don't want that. Why me? Why not someone else? Then a time when the person starts bargaining with God, please give me back my health. A time when depression may comes, that is the more difficult, because if depression may comes, as in this chapter, it can become a crisis, and it's very difficult for the person to go out of that crisis. And then finally, the acceptance of the situation and letting it go. There are a lot of milestones on those 5 steps, but the fact is that someone needs to help the terminal patient, and to help or provide assistance also to the family. Usually those stages can be eliminated or minimized by psychological therapy, or more important for our talkings, with the knowledge of the spiritual reality. What I've been saying here, the mortality and survival of the soul, the knowledge of life in the spiritual dimension. Of course, the pain of a mother leaving her child or her children, or the father leaving his wife and his children, or a lover letting go of her love, is not easy. Is missing someone. We miss each other if we know each other well. I miss my mom, who lives in Brazil. I have one son who lives in Rio, another lives here, and many people, many relatives around the world and friends around the world. I miss them all. And we may say yes, but we will see them. Yes, maybe, maybe not. Who knows what is coming tomorrow? But what I know is that I will live tomorrow, either here or in the other side of life. Because life with big L is only one, is immortal. Life with little l there are many, many lives that we live throughout our bigger life. And the other, what I also would like to point here is how to prove that there is um, an spiritual world. Do we need to prove? But in fact, it's interesting that from a spiritual perspective, either from the scientific point of view or from the spiritism point of view, we'll see that research merge to go to a common point. The deathbed visions are common in the sick, in the illness person, and they could be visions or conversations with spirits and discarnate relatives or friends. And interesting, the other persons that live with the person, the terminal ill person, can also, or persons that have a crisis, are in a moment of crisis, they can also see people or see discarnated or disembodied person. One of the universities who does quite a lot of research in that is the University of Virginia in America, and you can go to their sites and look of how they do those researches and how there is a good base research. I'm not sure if some people here that are listening to me are from this area. I apologize if I'm giving a flat information that means not so deep, but we don't have much time for that. What I would like to point out is from already in the beginning of the 19th century and end of 18th century, there were a lot of researches on what the dead person, what is going on with the dead person, what is going on in the deathbed. And Ernesto Borzano is an Italian psychologist and psycho researcher. He is one of the researchers who collect quite a lot of material, like also Gabriel Delany did that too. Gabriel Delany before him. But he identified 5 types of apparitions of diseased persons. The first one, only the dying person perceives the spirit. Some of them he didn't or she didn't know had already disincarnated. The second is the dying person, and the persons who are with her or him perceive the presence of a spirit. That means both dying and the relatives or who is with them perceive the presence of a spirit. The third case is only the family members perceive the presence of the spirits. That means the patient is not aware. Sometimes the deathbed apparitions occur coincidentally with medium, with other confirmations, with mediums that tell one of the relatives or the persons that they have seen or they gave messages. And the fifth case is the apparitions of the dying person himself, moments after his death, and in the same house where the corpse is or not. And I will tell you some examples on that to illustrate. Borzano also said that because his aim was to prove the spiritual life, what the scientists at that time and they still in our time say that all that are hallucinations. What he says is that if phenomena of hallucinatory vision take place in the crisis of death, it is also certain that telepathy, telekinesia, lucidity, premonition, bilocation, etc., also cure. That means if the deathbed apparitions are hallucinatory vision, what are the others? And this is one of the arguments. I told you that I would tell some examples. I myself have experienced some interesting event. The first one, it was just when after I came to Vienna. I came here in 1989, and I was living in a house with 2 floors. And in the morning, I send the kids to school, and I still have some time to go for a short sleep, or my husband would send them, and I would have half an hour, 1 hour sleep. And one of those days, I woke up, the kids have left, and had left with my husband, and I woke up with the voice of my grandmother calling me in the way that she called me. And I woke up, looked, and I said, "Oh, I'm dreaming," and slept again. 15 minutes later, I woke up with a call. The telephone rang. At that time, there was no mobiles. I had the telephone near my bed, and my aunt in Brazil, she lived in Porto Alegre with my grandmother. She tells me, "Rejane, are you awake?" I said, "Not really." And then she thought, "Then please be quiet, but Granny died." And I only told her, "Yes, I know." Because as you say, I immediately understood what happened. The other cases also happened with someone I know quite well, a friend of mine. He had an interesting and very seldom problem. He had an infection in 1 or 2 teeth. I don't remember, 1 tooth or 2 teeth, I don't know, in the mouth. And he didn't pay much attention. He went to the dentist. They made a treatment, but probably inflamed. They gave him antibiotics, but didn't work. And he had septicemia. In a week, he went to the hospital, but he was really very ill. And although the family thought that he would survive, 2 days before he died, he told his wife, "Don't bother, don't worry with me. My mom and my father are here with me, and they will come to take me." He was very spiritual, but she was not. And in fact, 2 days after, he passed on. And the third is the story of a young boy who was also terminal ill, and he tells his mom that his father came to visit. His father had passed away many years ago. And the mother say, "Oh, my son, you dreamed about that. Don't worry, you are getting well." And this is quite normal also, that the people get well just before dying. And there is an explanation about that. And he said, "No, Mom. He told me that in next week or in 2 days, 3 days, he will come to visit me again." And exactly the date that he told his mom that his father would come, he died. This is communication and premonition in the deathbed. Three simple examples. There are plenty of examples, even in the internet, but in books written by Gabriel Delony, by Ernesto Borzano, by Leon Denis in the Spiritism literature. And if you look in the scientific point of view, you may find some too. The other way of looking to the survival of the dead is studying or looking at understanding the out-of-body experience. The out-of-body experience and the communications of spirits who bring back the message of how they pass to the next stage of life are very similar. The meeting with the family members or with friends, the seeing a tunnel of light, hearing voice or a voice taking them to the path, to the new path, seeing and hearing what was going on when the health professionals attempted to save their lives. These are all features that appear in the out-of-body experience. That means when someone is declared clinical death, but survived and come back. There are classical examples of that. Interesting is that each individual has or will have its way of passing on, of dying, just as leaving the physical body is different. Everyone experiences an out-of-body experience different, an OEE, different than the other individual. Each death is also individual. Each human being is an individuality with a very specific level of consciousness. I'm different from any of you, and you are different from me. And when I talk with my son, I have to acknowledge that he is very difficult than myself. He thinks different. He's in a different path of his life, not his life, even his life with L, small L, or with big L. And so we are, here among ourselves. And because of we are different, we face different the last moments of our physical life. And how we think, how we perceive the world and the reality will influence the way that we go to the spiritual world. I have quite a lot of other points to talk to you. I'm not sure if you will have time, because we could talk here also about the past life memory, and reincarnation is another way of giving a glance at a previous life. That means of being sure that we are immortal, because if we live before and we are now here, we are a soul living through many lives, like quite a lot of psychologists in America have already written. And those are the two researchers. There are others who did quite well in this area, Ian Stevenson and Jim Tucker, who continued the studies of Ian Stevenson. There are also Dr. Banerjee, who even helped Ian Stevenson with his research. This, by the way, this case of Leninger is there is quite a lot of discussions in the scientific community about that. Some of them accuse Tucker, and others go with Tucker. I'm the one that go with Tucker on that. I think he did a very well and fundamental research. Although the book was published, the boy really we could prove scientifically that the boy have a memory of his past life. If someone wants, I can tell one of the last discussions on that within the scope of the Society for Scientific Exploration. We will not talk much about that. We have 5 minutes. But it's interesting to remember that we are not only the body, we are not only the soul, the spirit, but in between we have the spiritual body, what Kardec called perispirit. And this perispirit is attached to our body cell by cell, atom by atom. This means that when it needs to free itself from the body, it also will free itself little by little, or cell by cell, organ by organ, and it takes time. And how Kardec says in Heaven and Hell, it says that the separation is complete and final only when not a single atom of the perispirit is connected to any one molecule of the body. In this hystogenesis, the spiritual hystogenesis, of course, the perispirit gets a new physiology, more adequate to the spiritual world, with elements appropriate for nutrition and sexual function. And who talks very well about that, who brings the knowledge about that, is André Luiz through the mediumship of Francisco Cândido Xavier. Also, we know that the perispirit will take the form and appearance of the physical body of the outgoing incarnation. However, when after living for some time in the spiritual world, we may transform, because the perispirit has a plasticity function, we may transform and we may get other appearance if we can, with our mind transform ourselves. And when I say that, I wanted to point out that our mind is so powerful, our thinking process is so powerful, our thoughts are so powerful, and we don't use them properly, even here in this life, in this existence. This incarnation then is not immediately, it is gradual, and the process of detachment of the perispirit is not abrupt generally. However, in case of the accident, it may be abrupted. And more important, it varies according to the values and thoughts that each one cultivates within. This is why the spiritual guides tell us, think about the good, think on joy, don't let you get sad, get depressed and afflicted with the small things that happen in our life. Sometimes a small event, we enlarge it so big, and it comes with such an emotional attachment to us that we get in despair, we don't like someone, we start being rude with someone just because of a little incident. We need to take more care of what are our values, how we think, where we put our will, like the philosophers already said before, where our will is our soul. To finalize, I think I have said already about that the suffering that accompanies that will depend on the adhering force that binds the body to the perispirit, and to weaken this force, to accelerate the speed of this disengagement process, is with ourselves, is everything that we can make to help that this process is better for ourselves. And the way of helping this process is prayer. When we pray, we get in harmony within ourselves and with our spiritual guides, and we allow them to come near us. The process that happens in this end of life usually are those 5 processes. Is the importance of prayer, and we will see if you read, and I will not have time to do that here, but if you read in the Workers of the Life Eternal, from Francisco Cândido Xavier by André Luiz Spirit, the disincarnation of Dimas is a classical event of disincarnation, but the process of Dimas' disincarnation is a very natural process, but it tells us all the paths or how he perceives the action of his prayer, how he calms himself, how he allows the spiritual guides, the assistants, to lose the ties of the perispirit to his body. And the relaxation that comes, the coma that he gets in propositally, that he gets in this coma, that he does influence the process. And sometimes we say, the terminal person now, he gets, he will not die any longer. He got his back, he got his health back. It's just a phase sometimes. Sometimes it's true, sometimes it's just a phase. The last phase that everyone goes quite to keep their lives again, and the ill patient is alone and can pray, can sleep, and the spiritual guides can act on the final release of the perispirit, of the spiritual body. What I would like to show here is that there is quite a lot of talking about how the disincarnation, the disincarnation processes. Many people and some spiritualistic views say that the disincarnation is through the thorax. Is not. The perispirit is released through the crown chakra, to the first the head, with as André Luiz reports, with an intense golden violet light, absorbing much of the milk-like substance, the ectoplasma, that is released from the body, and then forming, or the vital force as we wish, and then forming the new body, the spiritual body, and the light losing its brilliance as it spreads through the new body, because usually as incarnated we don't have much light. We'll get our light when we go to the spiritual life and we start again working within ourselves. Very few people in this existence has a lot of light, like Francisco Cândido Xavier, or maybe Mother Teresa, Mother Teresa of Calcutta, Gandhi, and others. This picture I want to show you because it shows Dimas in this story after the disincarnation process, not fully because he has some tights, you can see in the picture, that with the crown chakra, but with his mother, with the help of the mother who was already in the spiritual life, holding him and getting him in with love, that he could rest and go through the funeral period and all this hard and difficult period for family and for the individual who is disincarnating. To finalize, I would like to emphasize the need of the prayer, the harmonious thoughts, not only when it comes our time to pass to the next life, but also if we are assisting someone who is dying. Comforting, holding the hands, helping, assisting, talking, letting people talk. This is the way to help. And this is how we'll minimize and make smooth this passage to the new world. Not to forget that our life here is very valuable. It provides us with a lot of educational experience. Although we make a lot of mistakes, but we have some success, we consolidate with those mistakes and success each step of our evolution, evolving spiritually and learning how to obey to the divine laws, because the universe is love and love is harmony. And I use each stone that we threw in the pond of this universe, in the lake of the universe, makes a disturbance. And then it's better to send only love and to live with love with him and to our friends and companions, as Jesus told us to do. Thank you. This is what I would like to share with you, and I'm open for comments, questions, if you have, because it was a very simple talking.
Thank you so much, Rejane. Thank you for the reflections you provided. Okay, let's see what questions we have. This one from the United States Spiritist Federation. Can having a purpose in life reduce our fear of death?
Of course. Viktor Frankl, an Austrian psychologist, wrote a beautiful book on his experience in the concentration camp. And his whole theory is about the purpose of life. Who does have a purpose of life does live. Means having a purpose of life reduce our fear of life, of course, and also having a purpose of life makes easy for us to live in this disturbed world that we are in, with so much suffering, terrorism, wars, uncertainties. When we focus, we let the other things go. And focus is having purpose.
Yes, that is the book Man's Search for Meaning by Viktor Frankl. Okay, next question. This is from the U.S. Spiritist Federation. A lot of testimonies of near-death experiences talks about seeing the light or walking towards the light. How does Spiritism explain this?
I love that question.
Mm-hmm.
That is very interesting, and I've thought a lot about that. When we read the work of André Luiz through Francisco Cândido Xavier, you find that they talk about a passage, and I'm not sure in which book it is. I'm sorry, it is the book in Portuguese is called Voltei, I Return, and it's written by a spiritist, Brazilian spiritist, and he reports through the mediumship of Chico Xavier, he reports his experience from the deathbed through the next life. And there is a very interesting event. He says that he feels himself weak, but someone holds him and supports him, but he's fully aware of what is going on. And there is a step, or they are forced to rest, but and then after some rest, the spiritual guides take them. Not only he, but there are other diseased persons, discarnated persons or discarnate, that are with him, and they say that uh, they tell them, now please pray and try to get very good thinking, good thoughts. Why? Because they have to cross a passage. This passage, they say, that is a light bridge, a bridge of light that connects our the lower spiritual dimensions with the not higher, but with the spiritual dimensions where this not our home, to where the spiritual colonies, spiritual towns are. And he describes this as a bridge, a light of bridge. And myself, I connect that with this tunnel. It's a bridge to to the real world, not to the dimensions that in Spiritism, in Portuguese, they call umbral. I don't know how you call that in English, but to the lower spiritual dimensions, but to the, let's say, the middle spiritual dimensions, where persons like you and me, I don't know you, but where I might go, because I'm not such evolved. So
Sometimes they call it
how
the inner
I
being.
would explain the walking towards the light, walking towards the better dimensions of life.
Okay, thank you. Let's see what our next question is. This is from the International Spiritist Council. Is it likely that there will be a time in the future when mainstream science will be convinced that the soul is immortal?
I'm working for that.
Yes.
And I hope any spiritist scientist is doing that. We are many now, and we see more and more that this is coming. In 2016, it was the first time I went to a conference. It was in Sweden about consciousness, and it was the first, not the first time I went to the conference, sorry, it was the first time I've seen in a conference discussions about God openly. And I've thought, oh, this opened a new way of looking to spirituality. And today, if we do some good research even in the more open academic work, you see that we are going through this path. We will see that. Not we, 100 years, maybe 15 years, who knows?
It's encouraging to see what happens.
We hope.
Yes. Okay, next question. According to Spiritism, what are the different places we can find ourselves after the death of the physical body?
Very interesting. Many. It depends on who we are. I think the tradition is that we go to hell, to purgatory, to heaven. This was the Catholic, the Christian old way of looking at that. In 2000, around 2000, the Pope already said that there are no places where we go. There are stages of consciousness. There are not different places where we can find ourselves. There are different states or phases of our consciousness, even emotions that will bring us to the spiritual dimensions. Even Chico Xavier already said that there are the spiritual reality, the spiritual world, is not a place like we see here on Earth. The water is different than our water, but we call water, and there are different places. We say usually we say that around our planet there are different dimensions. Those that are more closer to the Earth, to this dimension that we live, that interfaces with our thinking, and those beings that connect to the most common persons in life, they live quite near with our reality. But as much as you evolve in your moral, in your control your emotions, we are going to um, different consciousness states, conscious states. Sorry.
Okay.
I mean, we could talk about that also as dimensions, spiritual dimensions, and then it would be the same. I think. I'm not
Okay.
sure what is the question, if it's about the spiritual dimensions, because then we could say that the earth is a word of expiatory word, then the happy words, and so on. But I prefer to talk about the dimensions and
Okay.
talk about our spiritual reality around our planet. There are also good dimensions, or where dimensions like in these spiritual towns, where we can have quite a peaceful life if we are allowed to go there. But if we are not allowed, we'll have other colonies lower.
Okay. So where we go is a reflection of who we are, right? Because of thought.
This is the most important, no, Peter?
Yeah. Okay. I think we have time for one more question. So let's see what we have. From the United States Spiritist Federation, is it true that near-death experiences are very common?
Some people say that they are very common, but people don't talk about them,
Mm.
because most difficult is getting people talking about NDEs. But near-death experience and out-of-body experience are quite common. Out-of-body experience are part of the development of mankind. You can learn about it. Near-death experience probably are seldom, as more seldom as out-of-body experience, but they occur quite often. People don't talk. With the pandemic, I've heard quite a lot.
Really?
Yeah,
Interesting.
quite a lot. Very interesting for those who survive. There are, I think, even in 2020, 2021, there were quite a. I heard about 5 or 6. That is not normal in my community.
It's interesting that an event like the pandemic might trigger more discussions like that.
Also, that
Yeah.
is true.
Okay. Well, thank you, Rejane. And thank you, everyone who has watched today's live. And thank you, those who have been following our weekly Spiritism Talk series. Next Saturday, we will have Al Tari talking about without charity, there is no salvation. Rejane, can you do a final prayer for us, please?
Prayer?
Yes, please.
I'll try.
Okay.
When I close my eyes, I see the light. When I close my eyes, I look for the divine presence that is with me, that is with us. When I look to the sky, I find a star that brings me to another world. And I pray to God, please bless our earth, minimize the suffering, if possible. Give love and reasoning to those who have power to stop the war, to lessen the terrorism, to give the children and the youth the chance to live in a peaceful world. Lord, hear to us, listen to us, and make our path enlightened with your love. Thank you.
Thank you. Have a nice week.